Otherwise, it'd be a total disaster. Get into the mode. Drama, super drama. I'm getting used to this by now. It's my like third session today, so it's good. All right. So welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Today, we are joined by Shannon Tipton. Now, I actually first met Shannon in a consultant's coffee conversation with Elaine Beach, one of my favorite mentors in the training space, who we also are supposedly going to be interviewing in the next couple of weeks. She just won she had said yes. I love Elaine. She said yes. She got a big award this week at the ATD conference. So she sent me back a very nice thing. She's like, "Can we delay a week? I suddenly have 7 more interviews this week because I won an award." So it's like the Lifetime Achievement Award. So that's we're going to do that next week. It's fine. People can wait. Anyways, I met Shannon in this, which was a great meetup of consultants and coffee consultants, all that kind of stuff. Chased down the rabbit hole of the LinkedIn, came across her amazing website, Learning Rebels, and to say it resonated with me is an understatement. You'll get the nice pop-up when your first moments there. It's a nice pop-up. It literally says, "Join the rebellion." And there is nothing that appeals to me more as an educator than that sort of mindset of all that stuff out there, yeah, get rid of it. And similar to something that William Ballmeyer put out there about dumping smile sheets, instantly the white paper comes up. Smile sheets, we're done with this. And I'm a big believer in that. The idea that we shouldn't evaluate the wedding ceremony. We need to evaluate the entire marriage. We need to look bigger. So without further ado, Shannon has some of the best Twitter posts. She's one of the top 100 L&D posters on there. Top 100 L&D blogs in the world. You should follow her, listen to her. That's enough about me. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, that was awesome. I think that I can like end my day now on that. Thank you. I appreciate all that.
Well, thanks honestly for sharing so much. Basically all the facilitators I've been reaching out to, the one common thread is during these challenging times, they've really been putting out a lot of good material that is helping people make this transition. As you know, the ATD report, 10% of classes were live online last year. This year, it's like 95%. And you have been in this space doing a lot of good in it for quite some time. You're actually a big proponent of limiting sessions live online to 60 to 90 minutes. So this like polarizing thing. I'm actually very curious, for going to online, would you ever say longer works, or would you rather space it and use like microlearning in between?
I'm always going to tell you to space it. That's a really good question. And I do an internal cringe when I hear of trainers and companies trying to cram their typical instructor-led training into one virtual training box, if you will. It's just like, oh, why are we doing that to people? They're all going to turn into zombies and they're going to fall over dead. And no, don't do that. 90 minutes, perfect. 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Okay. I would cut it at that. And yes, absolutely. So when you talk about microlearning is that perfect connector, that you can have in between sessions that is really very helpful anyway. Even if you were doing your instructor-led training, it's really that area where you can say, I'm going to allow for space. We don't allow time for spaced learning enough, where people actually, there's good science behind this, where if you let people just sleep on the information, then the connections just become stronger. And then if you can inject some microlearning elements into that, either through I've been working a lot with chatbots recently. So you send them a chatbot after they're done with their lesson for the day that gives them additional lessons, additional video to read. You ask them some open-ended questions, et cetera, and you just keep bringing that information back to the front of their heads, and they're all primed for the next session. So to me, shorter is more impactful than longer. And if you can have more impactful training that sticks, why not? Why wouldn't you do that?
And so that's what we're telling clients. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. So I wonder. So I also want to follow up. I'm curious which chatbot you're using. If you're using mobile coach or which one. Is that the
Yep.
one, is it Mobile Coach or?
Mobile Coach is my platform. Yep.
Ah, okay. So you're doing it all, which is, it's a fantastic platform. So we'll put a link to all these in the stuff below, of course, as well as to Shannon's blog and many other resources she's got, and a cool book she's got, really nice ebook. So I'm actually curious, because I fully agree with you that I'm a big believer in the spacing. And it seems like, at least from my perspective, clients are much more receptive to it now. Like all these cool micro learning things that we've had ready, like we've had an app for years, but getting clients to actually use it with this kind of spaced repetition, has been sometimes a little bit of a struggle. It's a pretty shiny thing that might work, but they haven't really seen it in action. But now it seems like so many of our clients are actually doing it. And I wonder if you're having a similar experience. Do you feel like this is a tipping point for micro learning to go from a buzzword to something that is actually being widely used by organizations?
I think so, especially now when you think about it in consideration, or rather in conjunction with a blend.
Mm.
You know, so I've done a lot of work. Most of my client work is in blended solutions, incorporating some element of virtual or micro or what have you. And now it's great because for me, micro learning is the kissing cousin, to support the blend and to support the virtual programs. And so now, with everything that's happening, at first there was a panic jump. Okay, so oh my gosh, we have these face-to-face classes. Let's just put them all online. Okay,
Convert it. Yeah.
Right. So hopefully, I saw that there were a lot of voices out there about this, and hopefully mine was one of those supporters of, let's not do that. That's not a good idea. So now what? So now how can we then, okay, if we don't do that, then what? Okay, well, here's the then what. And the then what then is using those micro learning elements to their best application, understanding the context behind the use and understanding what your learning outcomes are going to be and the performance outcomes. And so once people are starting to talk like that, then it makes sense, to put these micro learning elements in place. And so do I see more of that? Yes. So now that conversation is switching back around. At first, people were contacting me, asking me about virtual stuff. And so now the conversation, my primary business is around micro learning. And so now the conversation is switched back around, not totally, but now it's together. Okay, so Shannon, now we get all this virtual stuff. How can we use micro learning to help support it? So I'm glad to have that conversation swinging back around again.
That's a beautiful blend. Amy, and you talked actually a bit about those first moments in your interview recently with Jeffrey Dalto. You talked about, I love this phrase, the direct conversion is a recipe for brain dead zombies. So totally agree with that. And so micro learning in terms of for the blend for spacing between the sessions, fully agreed. I think that's spot on, brilliant. I love how you're using Mobile Coach for that. I love those little nudges because it's an adequate, it just gives them that just in time kind of contact. What about for the face-to-face part, meaning the virtual live online part? What are the things that you think a lot of facilitators are getting wrong? Like you talked about preaching versus teaching previously. Is there anything else that you think are common mistakes that good facilitators are making when they go from face-to-face to online?
Yeah, there are. And thank you for that question. There are, the skill set is different yet the same. So when you do a lot of face-to-face training, it's all about the energy. And it's certainly all about the energy when you're doing virtual training as well. The mindset is different. And how the mindset is different is that when you're thinking about virtual training, you really are now in the broadcast business. Okay. So now it's about all of your tools being amplified, and realizing that this is now, the camera right there, that's a camera, but it's a person, so thinking about that camera as a person really becomes helpful. What I think are the major mistakes that facilitators are making in the virtual space is that they still consider themselves in this live training environment, which is not true. This means we need to allow time we need to allow people time. The number one question that I get from facilitators is, statement is, I don't like virtual training because I can't get engagement, because people don't answer questions. That's the number one thing I get. People do not answer questions. It's for one reason, primarily one reason. It's because you're not allowing space for them to ask questions. Here's how it works. Let me give you a real quick example. So when we're in the face-to-face world, right? And you're doing your thing, and you're up there doing your thing, and you say, okay, who has questions? And you're looking around, you do that quick woo around the room, right? And you're making eye contact with people, and you're seeing the little thing on their face that indicates that, ooh, a question might be popping up in their head, right? So you take a moment, you wait for that question to come, and then you answer it. All right, great. Now, you're in the virtual world. You and I here, we're doing this lesson. And again, you're in your thing and you're doing your groove, and and you say, okay, what questions do you have? And then you don't have the visual indicator. And so because you're afraid of that silence that happens online, people go, okay, well, any questions? Okay, no, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm moving on. It's like, no, you have to wait, because here's the process. You ask a question. Now, people have to process the question, especially if the question is not properly stated. Okay. So in the virtual world, you have to be very, very focused and very, very specific. Now, you've asked the question. So now they're processing the question. And now they're trying to think, well, what is the right question for the context of what we're talking about? Okay, so this thought is happening. All right, so now that they have formulated a question, the part that we forget is it's got to go from their brains to their fingers. They now have to type the question. And some people are better typers than others, so you still have those people,
That's me.
Right?
Hunt and peck. Yeah.
Okay. And
my guilty shame.
Yeah. So now we haven't waited. We've said, well, I don't see anything, so I'm moving on. And people are like, oh, well, okay. All right. And so then you move on. And that's why you're not getting any questions.
I completely agree. I think that we do all these subtle nudges that turn people off, like using technology without giving them time to adjust to the technology. Right. If you're using like a Miro thing, any of that. I think you're actually completely right. I was talking to Dr. Nilsson and Daniel Stillman last week, and exactly what you're saying. Both of them came back to the number one challenge that facilitators have moving online is dealing with that sense of time and how much time we give people. We just have this tendency to rush, and I think that's a real problem, that desire to get from A to B way too fast without that reflective space.
Yep. So, and that's why a one-to-one conversion is not going to work for you. You have to allow time. You do. And you can't be afraid of the silence.
Exactly. We have this human tendency to fill that noise, but we know how to deal with that in the face-to-face classroom, where we can sort of monitor the subtle signals that's positive silence. But virtually, it's so much harder because everyone's on mute until they unmute, and so there's not that feedback loop that's giving us that sign that, oh, they're doing something, that their brain is moving. It's just silence, which is always a bit terrifying. Yeah.
It is. And my technique for that is to seed it. So I'll ask people, I'll say, okay, let's just say we're talking about instructional design, and I might say, all right, so that, people, is Bloom's taxonomy in a nutshell. So now tell me specifically, what questions do you have about lower level thinking versus higher level thinking? Okay, so put that in the chat section for me. Now, while you're thinking about that, something that may have crossed your mind is, what's really the difference between analysis and application? What do you really mean about evaluate and create? Or why is the bridge between comprehension and application so broad? So here I'm seeding their thought, and not kind of filling in that awkward silence with things that have relevance and context behind the types of questions that I'm looking for.
No, that makes perfect sense. You're giving them tags to associate with so that they can riff off them. It's a
Right.
jazz musician laying down that core track that they can play off of. And I truly think there's that huge difference between even that subtle nudge of what questions do you have versus what questions do you have about
Right.
XXX, whatever it is. And night and day in terms of the quality and quantity of responses you're going to get.
Yeah.
And you talk about some of these rules and guidelines for facilitators in your book, Disruptive Learning. You had 6 power play rules that we need to get rid of. So that's new things we want to add. Is there anything that you would add to your 6 power play rules we need to get rid of in a virtual space?
I would say that the main question, the main power play rule is the one that
Mm.
says save your questions for the end.
Yep.
Okay. Oh my God, hate that so much. And my personality type would say, really? Challenge accepted. Ding, 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 ding. I'd be like filling up their chat with a bajillion questions just because you told me not to ask a question at that time.
Mm.
And that's not unique to the virtual world. I mean, live facilitators do that all the time, and I hate it then, hate it in the virtual space. In the virtual space, as far as power plays go, meaning when I say power plays, it's about remembering it's not about you as the facilitator, it's about them as the participants, it's about them as human beings on the other side of the computer screen. So anything that we're doing to control that, we need to let go of. For example, closing down the chat. Okay. Or taking the direct message ability away. We don't
Oh,
want
I
them
hate that.
we don't want them talking behind our back.
I
So
want a back channel. Oh my God.
yeah, I
Yeah.
want a back channel too. Let
I
them
hate when
figure it
clients
out.
remove it.
Yeah. Oh my
I
God.
have a couple clients that they've removed, they're like, oh yes, we've turned off the chat feature. I'm like, why? Why
Why?
would you do that? Oh,
Well,
we
we
don't
want them
allow
to
the use of a
focus.
Miro canvas. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
why would you cut off? No, no, yeah. Completely agree on
So
that.
those would be the two that I would
Mm.
say, just stop.
So what would you say then? So I completely agree that, shutting down the chat, terrible idea. Telling people not to ask questions because it should be a dialogue, not a monologue. I mean,
Right?
ideally, that's what we're trying to create here.
I'm
We're
not
trying to
Jerry
provoke
Seinfeld
thought.
here, people.
Correct. Thankfully not. This is facilitators in cars getting coffee. Exactly. That's what Elaine's creating. So it could be that. I am kind of curious then, beyond the Zoom itself. So I completely agree with you in chat and stuff. Are there any tools? So you've got for microlearning, you've got mobile coach, but for the live sessions, are there any tools that you like to bring into the mix beyond like the Zoom windows itself? Do you play with Miro, Mentimeter, any of those kind of things? I'm just curious,
Mhm.
what do you recommend and how? What do you think really adds and what's just shiny things that are better left behind?
Distraction.
Yeah, distractions.
And I think that it's about context. How do you want to
Mm.
use them? It's not unlike the live facilitator who says, okay, science tells us that we've got to get people moving around every 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to have people stand up and do musical chairs and then sit back down. Okay. And people are like, what the what? What just happened? Why are we doing that?
Exactly.
So it's that same, it's the same thought process that needs to occur. So the right tool for the right time. Now, to answer the question, I Google Docs for me, I love me a good
Oh,
Google Doc.
yeah.
One of my favorite things for people to do is put them in groups and then have them capture their own notes in a shared Google Doc space. So then what happens is that they are building their own resource materials, and then I share those notes with everyone. So each group has their own Google Doc, and it's in a shared folder. So you could bounce back and forth between the
Mm.
docs if you wanted to, but at the end, what I do is I kind of link everything together so it's not so hard for people to find. But what I love about doing that is enforced note-taking is another big giant myth. Just
Yeah.
because we tell people to take notes doesn't mean that learning is sticking. What matters is that they're taking the notes they want to take. That's a very important distinction. So now when you talk about Google Docs, they are taking the notes they want to take. And it's amazing, even though I tell them, I'm reading your notes, they're still on there. They're uploading pictures of whatever and, inside jokes. I love that because
That's
that means
awesome.
they're having fun with the tool, and I love
Mm.
them with that. So Google Docs is a big one that I love to use in session and in between sessions. It's transferable. Um, then as far as collaborative activities, Mural, I love Mural. I love MindMeister,
Yeah.
which is about collaborative mind maps, because I love a good mind map. So I go between
Oh, me
Coggle.
too.
I go between Coggle and MindMaster for that. And then I also like to use Umu. So UMU. So I like to use
Big
that. And
ATD sponsors.
yeah, and I love them. And what I like to use their tool for is, aside from putting together coursework for clients, is I use it for ask me anything applications.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
yeah, so there you can go out, you put you put some content into your course, as it were, and the question is, whatever it is. So
Mm.
what questions do you have about instructional design? And I might send that out as a pre-work assignment or something. So what questions do you have about instructional design, specifically around content creation, or specifically around facilitator guides, or whatever? And then I send that out to the group, and then they ask all of their questions in there. They can vote them up, they can vote them down. And so what happens is now you have conversations with a subject matter expert. And within the Umu app, I can go in and I can answer them directly within the app. I could do voice. I could say, oh, look at that question. I could do an audio response. And then they have those immediate connections, and they
That's
can
awesome.
ask me questions anytime they want. So I bounce between Umu and Slack for that.
Okay. Yep.
So it really depends on my audience, what they're doing, how I'm doing it. But anything that's going to allow group questions and group conversations, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
No, that is that. I mean, that's spot on, fantastic. I love the voting up and voting down of questions, so you really get a sense of, oh, how prioritized is this by the group? So that
Right.
I just like that.
Exactly.
You know, uh, I had that shared. So I was initially skeptical of the whole shared Google Doc co-creation thing, but then I was in a session. Jan Chipche, Studio D, did this an entire like educational retreat, and for the entire 3.5 days, we were co-creating the workbook in the background. So there wasn't a workbook, there wasn't that. It was
Mhm.
made by the learners. Yeah, yes, he was
Right.
contributing, of course. Yes,
Right.
his facilitating assistants contributed as well. But this is what we together were creating, and I think that mindset, that approach to it, of where we all take ownership of the creation, is incredibly powerful. And I wonder if you think that that's even potentially more accessible and more readily available now that we're moving to a virtual space, that people, because it's right at the fingertips, it's something
Right.
that's instantaneous. It's not I have to take out a laptop or a tablet, it's already right there.
Right, because you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your laptop. You can access a tool like Google Docs or Dropbox.
Oh, it froze. Uh-oh. So it's still recording. I'm going to edit this part out if we can get Shannon back. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh, you're back. Sorry,
I
yeah, you didn't go anywhere. It froze for a moment.
oh,
It may be it froze just for the last 30 seconds, which I will edit out. So that's an
okay.
easy. It's an easy edit. So apologies for that. It was suddenly that very dramatic facial expressions. Uh, where was I at? What's my question? I just lost my question. That's the problem of doing something new.
The ease of using collaborative like Google
Yes. Is it? Do you think
Docs.
there's more? Is it easier now than ever before because of it's readily available at our fingertips?
Yes, absolutely. So you think about all the varieties. So if you don't like, if your organization doesn't like Google,
Mm.
okay, you can use OneNote, right?
Yeah, that's
You,
true. Right in Windows. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
you could do the exact same things in OneNote or Dropbox Pages or Evernote. There's a variety of different applications. So don't get stuck in the tool. Think about what it is do I want the tool to do? And then
Mm.
I guarantee that you're going to find a variety of different solutions that will help you get to your end game, whatever that may be, you know. So don't take those out of the equation. I love it when people collaborate, because it becomes almost a wiki,
It
right?
is. It is.
You know.
It's absolutely that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
My one fear always with, oh,
no, that's fine. So you pick up the links or the resources or what have you, you know, because your notes are going to be different than my notes. They're not any more or less valuable. You just may have picked up a piece of information where I went, oh, how did I miss that? Totally missed that. And I'm so glad I see it. So that's the advantages.
I love your pointing out that, because it's that whole like simple research that we don't process everything in the classroom, no matter how fascinating the person is, the facilitator, and
Right.
our our other fellow learners. There's only so much we can process, that whole signal to noise ratio. So it's more minds are better. So I am cautious that we're coming up to the end of the time that you've generously given us. I guess for a last question, I'm going to try to get away with a twofold question. Feel free to answer either one of them. Try to answer either one of those. Is there any closing piece of advice that you would give to facilitators who are making this move to the online, or it's an either or choice, or is there, because there are so many tools out there, but there's always a gap? Is there anything that you wish we could do online with our virtual facilitation that just isn't quite possible yet? You know, it's something that I really wish we could do that, but we can't yet. Or feel free to go with the first one, just advice to the universe.
Well, I think the two actually are linked. My piece of advice is to play with the tools. Because I have really yet to find a tool that doesn't do what I need it to do. You know, so when you think about ILT to VILT conversion, when I'm creating workshops for clients, or even my own workshops for that matter, I start activities first. I don't open up PowerPoint. I don't do any of those things. I'm thinking about what do I want people to do, and what activities support that action. Okay, so now in the virtual world, it's the same thing. I have these activities. So now how can I make those activities and those outcomes happen? Okay. So does that mean I need to use a tool like Kahoot? Or do I need to use Mural? Or do I need to open up Coggle? Or do I need to have a floating Google Doc to make that happen? So if we're doing a case study, I'm going to put that into a Google Doc, and then I'm going to put people in breakout rooms, and I'm going to give them links to that Google Doc so that they can make notes within it in their breakout rooms. So you see what I mean? So it's not that I don't think that there are things that aren't happening or out in the space. I think it's because as facilitators or as L&D people, we have not played around in the space enough.
We need to be curious.
We need to be more curious about what we are doing. And man, have I been saying that since day one, right? It's interesting because when my newsletter goes out, the ones that are opened the most are the ones that I have tools in. Bingo. So I can say webinar tools or virtual tools or microlearning tools, those get opened like that. And I'm happy to see that, you know, because that means that people are curious. And then I look to see how many of the tools are actually being opened, you know. So as predicted, you know, the first couple that I put into a list get opened, and then it dwindles as the list gets longer, you know. So I'm just like, yeah, I caught your attention, squirrel, you know, for a second. But I wish that people were unafraid or would just make the time to really go in and investigate before we start saying, oh, we can't do that. I can't do that. My company won't let me do that. Your company won't let you do that. What are you, 12? Come on. You know, it's like, it's not a matter of it's a matter of you investigating and putting the options in front of your organization and saying, we can do this. This is why it's better. This is why it saves us money. This is why it makes us smarter, better, faster. So it's so a little bit of a tangent to your question, but I think that the
Perfect.
two questions are actually connected. You know, there's nothing out there. We are only limited by our imaginations and by the depth of curiosity that we're willing to throw out into the universe. And when you throw it out into the universe, it's going to come back at you. And you're going to find that there are tools out there for you to use, that there's a way and a means to be able to get the job done that you need to get the way you need to get the job done for your organization and for the humans within your organization.
And I think I'm just gonna, yeah, exactly. Hands up to that. I'm gonna give a big clap to that. I think that's a perfect coda, and I think it's the mark of what I most am concerned about, but also what I'm most hopeful about with all the organizations I work with. Going forward, a year from now, the organizations that have allowed their employees to chase that curiosity and actually go on with things. Like, I understand some might be a little afraid of Zoom. Those clients that have been like, you know what, but it's still the best platform. They
Right.
said, use it on your personal device. Wasn't a problem then. They've all got a tablet or a laptop or something that they could use it on. So they found a workaround to actually make it work, as opposed to, oh no, we're going to shut it down and go back to a subpar thing. And the learning's still going to be of an identical caliber. And it's just not.
Right.
So just those that chase curiosity and experiment and play will end up in an amazing place in terms of their online education going forward.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. It's been absolutely fantastic advice. Please, everybody, do take a look at her blog, her Twitter posts, her LinkedIn posting. It's a plethora of things, let's just be honest. Get her book, which is also awesome. You can link to that on the website. It's a nice little book compiled of all sorts of interesting blog entries and stuff. And without further ado, thank you very much, Shannon, for being an awesome guest on this podcast
Well,
or
thank you,
program.
Joshua. I really appreciate you asking me to be here and sharing your audience with me. I really do appreciate that.
And if anybody's watching this at ATV, go to her on-demand talk, which is amazing. It's fantastic. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night, Shannon. Or actually, a great day, I should say. You're just
Yes,
getting started.
I
Thank you so
am.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And